Well, good day, folks. I got a request to make this video and I thought it might be about time I did so. So I'm standing in one of our buildings. We just built this custom shed for one of our customers. He's got an insulated double door over here. We insulated the floor, but he wants to do the rest of the work himself. So we're hanging out in this one today. So I just thought I'd run down the differences between either pulling a permit, needing a permit, or not needing a permit here in Ontario as we understand it. So in April of 2022, the Ontario Building Code was amended. It was not changed. There was an additional clause put into place pertaining to outbuildings, sheds, accessory buildings, those kinds of things. So some of you might have remembered back in the day, you could have, most people thought, a 10 by 10 shed. That wasn't really true anyways, because it used to be 10 square meters, which by the math equates to around 108 square feet. So most people did a 10 by 10 shed or 10 by 10 outbuilding or 10 by 10 accessory building on their property because that's basically what was allowed, right, without a permit. Now in April of 2022, they amended the Ontario Building Code to allow for a 15 square meter outbuilding accessory building shed. So in the building code, I do believe it refers to shed specifically, but call it what you want, right? So what they did is they amended it so it's an additional law on top of the existing law that now allows for a building that is 15 square meters to be had in any Ontario property, provided it meets certain criteria. So one is it has to be 15 square meters or less. By the math, that works out to just a little bit under 162 square feet. So that's why you see lots of buildings available, whether you're looking on Kijiji Marketplace. A lot of Highland Outbuildings are 10 by 16, 8 by 20, 12 by 12, that kind of thing. They're under that 162 square feet, okay? Additionally, they cannot be attached to any other structure. They have to be a standalone building. To go along with that, they have to be a secondary structure on a property. So that means there has to be a primary structure already there. Sure, there's some room for interpretation there, but realistically, if you have a house on the property already, you can have an accessory building like a shed that's 15 square meters or less, as long as it's not attached to anything else, and it does not require a permit. There are a couple other things. One that's really important is they can only be a single story. So you can't have like a 30-foot tall, 15 square meter building. That does not make sense under the new law. Now, could you have a 12-foot tall building? Sure you could. Could you have a 14-foot tall building? Maybe. Like, these things are open, again, to interpretation. What we do is we build almost predominantly 10.5-foot tall structures because we have to put them on top of a trailer and we ship all of our buildings in one piece. So by the time we get on the trailer and get down the highway, we need to make sure that we're not going to hit the bridges and the power lines, right? So most of the Highland Outbuildings that you see are going to be 10'6". It'd be rare for us to go any lower than that. If we, and we're working on it maybe, end up with a shorter trailer, that means we can get a little more room inside a building. But I'll show you actually, in the building right next to me here, we can still get a loft. Sort of a windy day up here today. We can still get a loft inside one of these buildings. And it's a pretty good sized loft. So if we had a 8-inch shorter trailer, this loft up here, that's more than enough space for a mattress or a ton of storage. This building is 10'6". The peak height at the absolute highest part of the building from the ground is 10'6". So that's why you see all these shorter buildings, because we're gonna move it in one piece, right? So anyways, there's that part. So we're under 15 square meters. We are accessory to a primary structure. We're not attached to anything else. And there's a couple other things. Single story we just talked about. And the last one is the building cannot have plumbing. So what I think the Ontario government is trying to accomplish with that is to prevent people from living in small sheds. Now, their rationale for that, I guess, makes sense to a certain regard. What are you going to do with the human waste? What are you going to do with the sewage? How are you going to get the water in and out of the building? We get winter here. How are you going to stop it from freezing? How are you going to prevent somebody's purchase, really? I think this is a big part of it. You know, somebody goes out there and buys a shed. Some seller tells them, you could live in this building. Sure, you could. And then their pipes freeze in the wintertime and then they're in trouble, right? So they're trying to protect the consumer to a certain extent, but they're also trying to protect our province, right? So like, if we have all kinds of people suddenly living in 10 by 10, 12 by 12, 10 by 16 buildings, what are we going to do with the poop, right? Or do you have a septic system? Do you have a well? Are we tied into city services? You could certainly do that and apply to get an ADU put on your property, because at the same time they're doing this new shed rule, they're also allowing for additional dwelling units in backyards of properties all over the province, right? You probably have enough space in your backyard, and if you applied for the permit, you can build an ADU in your backyard. You could have a totally standalone apartment in your backyard, as well as have a basement apartment. They've loosened all kinds of restrictions, and what they're trying to do is increase population density so that we can limit the sprawl a little bit. So at the end of the day, the lesson for us is, and one of the reasons Highland Outbuildings exists, is you can have an accessory structure that is smaller than 15 square meters, that has no attachment to another building, that is only a single story in height, that does not have plumbing here in Ontario, and it's the law, right? If there's additional municipal bylaws, I believe that the Ontario Building Code would supersede those. So due diligence is on the behalf of the landowner. We are not the permit police. We don't pull permits for you, although we can help you if you get into a situation. Here at Highland Outbuildings, we're more than happy to provide you with a CAD drawing. We can get that engineered for you at a cost to make sure that you do get the permit that you apply for. That's the other thing, is just get a permit if you feel like you need it. If you're going for a building that's larger than 15 square meters, you're gonna need a permit, right? We regularly get permits for buildings that are larger than 15 square meters. It's not difficult. It can be time consuming, and it's a bit of a bureaucratic quagmire, but it's not impossible, okay? Now, the other thing, I'm glad I just remembered this. So if you have a property that does not have a primary structure on it, the rules are different. Based on the building code and our understanding and interpretation of it, is you can't just stick a shed on a bush lot somewhere that doesn't have another building on it. You're going to require some sort of a conversation with the municipality about how that works. Can you put a building on a bush lot? Absolutely you can. There are hunt camps all over Ontario. There are temporary structures that are put into place while a building permit gets satisfied by the municipality. And you can use a small structure until you build a big one. Totally possible. Do buildings end up on bush lot properties all over Ontario anyways? Yes, they do. Do we recommend doing some research and some due diligence to find out what you can do on your remote acreage in the middle of nowhere? Absolutely. We don't assume any liability for the decisions that you make. And we're not lawyers, we're shed builders, bunkie builders, cabin builders, tiny home builders, right? So at the end of the day, there's a bunch of homework that needs to be done. There's a bunch of considerations that need to be made, but there are new laws in place. You can look at our Facebook page. It's pinned right to the top of it. It shows you the section. I believe it's section 1.3.1.1. I'm not sure if I remember that correctly. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. And it specifically stipulates the rules for a building with no permit. If you need a permit, get a permit. If you have a big building you want to put on your property, get a big building. If it's a remote acreage and it's actually planned to be your hunt camp, just get a permit as a hunt camp. It doesn't have to be the same rules as a house, right? So the main things are the services that come in and out of the building. What are you gonna do for water? Do you have a well? Do you have a septic? Well, in this day and age, people are off grid as a recreational or hunting situation. They're often using an outhouse, or they're using a bucket toilet or an incinerating toilet or a composting toilet. They're bringing water in, or they're collecting water off the roof. These are different rules than if you're living in something full time. So there's a lot of stuff to figure out, and we're happy to talk to you about these things, at least our understanding of them. But we don't assume the permit challenges from you guys. It's up to you guys to do your homework on that. There are legal ramifications if you don't follow the rules, but there are interpretations to be made within the building code as well as your municipal bylaws. So don't get too upset about getting frustrated by that. It's been done, and there's lots of different ways to skin that cat. So as always, thanks for checking us out here at Highland Outbuildings. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. I'd be more than happy to do a video answering your questions, at least to the best of my ability. I'm not the smartest man in the world or the brightest light on the Christmas tree, my dad used to say. But we do this every day, right? We deliver buildings every week all over the province. Some of them are small, some of them are big, some of them don't need a permit, and some of them do. And we're more than happy to make that happen for you. So check us out at highlandoutbuildings.com, and you can call me anytime, 705-309-9088. Cheers.